Getting a life sentence is a lot easier than you might think. You don't have to commit some kind of heinous crime in order to get life in prison, especially in states like Texas. Texas has what's called the law of parties. My very best friend, she is on parole for the rest of her life. She served 30 years on her life sentence in prison, and she never pulled the trigger. She was with a man who she feared, and rightfully so, when he unalived someone. She was afraid to leave him, to report that. 2 days later, when she was able to get away from him, she reported the crime to the police and was arrested under the Texas law of parties, which means, hey, if you're there, you're guilty too. It's a very scary situation. Texas is not the only state that has these kind of laws.
I went to prison for armed robbery and I never even touched the... You know how adults are always saying, choose your friends wisely? There is what is called the hand of one is the hand of all law, also known as the accomplice liability theory. And what that means is that you only have to be with the person who commits the crime to be charged with the crime itself. If you were walking around with a friend at Walmart and your friend stole a lip gloss and you didn't even notice and you didn't know she was going to steal it, but she got caught, you could be charged with shoplifting. I was locked up with a girl who had met some friends at the library at her school. She was a college student. She was talking to this new guy, and it was some of his friends. He asked her if she wanted to hang out that night, and she said yeah. They came to her dorm room and picked her up. On the way to wherever they were going, one of the friends was like, I need to stop at my house real quick. They pulled up, everybody got out and started walking up the drive. She was like, well, I'm just going to sit here and charge my phone. She's looking at her phone, just waiting. Turns out they were breaking and entering, and they had all of a sudden, all the friends come running out of the house. They jump in and they speed off. And she was like, what's going on? And they were like, oh, nothing, ha ha ha. And they tried to play it off like they were just trying to scare her. Later that night, they're hanging out at one of their houses and the police come busting in. She's like, whoa, like what in the world? And they said they were arresting her for first-degree burglary, assault and battery, and for armed robbery. She had to plead down from that crime and she still got 10 years in prison. So yeah, choose your friends wisely.
With that in mind, let's compare some of the things women get arrested for and some of the things men get arrested for, and the huge differences in their sentences. A woman was fined for fighting back too well against a man who essayed her. Milica Zivkovic walked into court as a victim, but the judge treated her like the aggressor for, quote-unquote, exceeding the necessity of self-defense. The 24-year-old was walking home with a friend after a night out in the town of Kolasin in northern Montenegro when she noticed a man was following them. He tried to speak with them, but the two ignored his advances and tried to laugh it off. What followed next made her fearful for her life and anticipating the worst. Milica said, he grabbed my chin and then he grabbed me by my intimate part. Defending myself, I hit him with a closed and then open fist, which I learnt while training kickboxing for 4 years. Side note, to all the women watching, I suggest you all take some self-defense classes like she did. She added, in such moments you can only think of the worst. But I fought as hard as I could, and of course I knocked him out. Milica was fined €82 for defending herself and for supposedly violating public order and peace. Meanwhile, the man who attacked her had to pay only €370 before being released from prison. Women and girls are told that they must have liked it if they didn't try to fight off their rapist or didn't fight back hard enough. This argument has been used across the globe to successfully defend men in court. But when women do fight back, they're punished through fines and imprisonment. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Stanford University swimmer Brock Turner sexually assaulted an unconscious woman named Chanel Miller. Brock Turner faced up to 14 years in prison. Prosecutors asked for 6 years. The judge sentenced him to 6 months. He ended up serving just 3 months. This man, who tied up and essayed a 14-year-old girl, served no jail time. Another man who was arrested for kidnapping, choking, and masturbating over a woman avoided prison time. At just 16 years old, Cyntoia Brown, who faced years of abuse, was sentenced to 51 years in prison for shooting and unaliving a man in self-defense after he essayed her. This all just reminds me of this video. When you do the numbers and realize that cops can get away with taking people's lives in quote-unquote self-defense, but there are women in jail for unaliving their rapists and abusers. Like what the first woman said in her caption. Lots of women I knew serving life sentences were there for crimes like stopping their abusers.
A police officer who tasered a 95-year-old great-grandma with dementia to death has been found guilty of manslaughter. Police and paramedics were called to the scene following reports that Claire Nowland had been walking around her care home in Australia with 2 serrated steak knives. The officer said that he fired his taser as he felt violent confrontation was imminent. Claire Nowland was still more than a meter away from the policeman when she was hit by the taser. She crumpled to the floor, hitting her head, which triggered a fatal bleed to the brain. The officer said that he did not believe that she would be significantly injured and that her death left him devastated.
And, you guessed it, he served no jail time. While men are getting away with literal murder, women are getting thrown in prison for posting on Twitter. A mother was jailed for 31 months for a tweet posted in the wake of the Southport incidents. She couldn't get released early after the Court of Appeal refused to reduce her sentence. A mother jailed for a tweet while real criminals walk free. Freedom of speech is now a crime for women, apparently. A man who essayed a mother of 2 and then burned her alive was handed a lighter minimum prison sentence due to his younger age and early guilty plea. Of course, the only person ever jailed in the connection to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes is a woman, Ghislaine Maxwell. Funny thing that a bunch of powerful men abused little girls and the only person in jail is a woman. This woman was brutally assaulted and scarred by a man, and she says, "I just found out the man who destroyed my life was found not guilty. Not because he was innocent, but because the system decided that blurry CCTV outweighed GPS evidence that placed him right there. Even though he lied to police about where he was that night. I'm furious. I'm heartbroken. I'm exhausted. This system fails victims like me every day, and still we're expected to stay quiet, stay calm, and move on. Well, not me. This isn't over. My voice will only get louder. I'm starting to realize that men get away with things like this, not just because they're men and they have male privilege, but also because their victims are women or girls. This man randomly punched an 11-year-old black boy in the face, fracturing his tooth and nose, then hurled racial slurs at him. He got sentenced to 3 years and 5 months in prison. Meanwhile, this girl was attacked by 3 of her male neighbors. When she was just 3 years old, those men threw acid on her, which led her to permanently lose her eyesight. They spent just 2 years in jail and are now roaming free, living their lives while she has to live with the horrors every single day. Hate crimes usually don't go unpunished unless is directed towards women and girls. A private school in Ajmer, Rajasthan, expelled a 17-year-old girl who survived a gang essay and prevented her from taking board exams, claiming her presence would spoil the atmosphere. Despite attempts to return, the principal allegedly barred her from attending classes and sitting for exams. So not only do men get away with doing terrible things to women and girls are the ones getting punished for it. Choi Mao-ja has finally received the long-overdue apology from the prosecution, who deemed her guilty for biting the rapist's tongue in self-defense, the crime that happened 61 years ago when she was 18 years old and has finally cleared her name. In 1964, Choi was 18. She tried to defend herself from the sex offender, 21-year-old No, who attempted to grape her. But the victim of the attempted grape, Choi, became the accused for inflicting injury by biting his tongue, while No became the supposed victim. At that time, the court focused on No's condition, who became mute for life after the incident. Because of this, Choi was sentenced to 10 months in prison and 2 years probation. On the other hand, No wasn't even charged with attempted grape. He got a lighter sentence for trespassing and threat. Florida evangelical pastor Paul Dial raped multiple children over the span of 30 years. He was sentenced to only 5 years of probation.
Did you know that the famous Jack Nicholson hired a sex worker and hit her to the point of irreversible brain damage? Nicholson, known for movies such as Batman and The Shining is regarded as one of the greatest actors of all time. But he also a woman by her up, throwing her to the ground, and causing irreversible brain damage. About a year after her injuries, it was found that they were a lot worse than what they thought it was. She's already had to pay about $60,000 in medical expenses, and she's slowly losing her vision. Eventually, this brain injury is going to kill her. What's interesting is that Jack Nicholson has recently made a comment that he's feeling single and lonely. I might say it's well-deserved for treating women like dirt his entire life. We need to stop supporting trash people.
And of course, he didn't get what he deserved for this. Women who get arrested and sent to jail are mostly just arrested for non-violent crimes or crimes that don't cause direct harm to others. But on the rare occasion that they get arrested for violent crimes, it's often out of self-defense or retaliation to abuse they face at the hands of men.
When I was in prison, I was part of this group called Sister Care, and it was a group of women who were learning to live life after have gone through domestic violence. And several of the women in my group had unalived their abuser. That is more common than you would think.
When you get angry and feel like the only way to get out of that situation is to unalive your abuser, it's more or less going to happen. Thank you so much if you watched to this point. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.